Ladies, have you ever walked into a room and felt like no one really saw you? Like your presence was just background noise? You smile, you show up, you love deeply, but still feel invisible. That pain of being half met, half loved, half seen, it stays with you. But what if I told you that when a man truly loves you, you won't have to beg for attention. You won't have to teach him how to treat you, because real love, it greets you with eyes that don't just look, they see your soul. When love is real, it doesn't knock loudly or demand to be noticed. It doesn't show up with grand gestures or loud declarations. It walks in slowly, softly, and stays. It notices things others miss. It sees the heaviness in your eyes, even when your lips stretch into a smile. It pauses before speaking because it wants to understand, not just respond. It greets you not out of habit, but out of heart. You don't have to prove your worth to it. You don't have to speak for it to hear you. Real love reads silence like a language it was born fluent in. You learn to tell the difference when love shows up differently. There's no pretending when someone looks at you like you're more than just a role in their life. They don't greet your face, they greet your soul. There's warmth in their presence that calms your shaking even if they never touch you. They hold the room with gentleness, like they know your heart's been broken before, like they don't want to be another wound. Their voice doesn't rush. Their eyes don't wander. Their energy says, "I'm here," without needing to announce it. It's not about what they say, it's about how you feel in their presence. There's a kind of greeting that makes you feel like you've been missing all your life until this moment. You didn't even know how much you longed for someone to simply see you until you were truly seen. Not for what you can do, not for how well you hide the pain, not for the image you keep up, but for the ache you carry quietly, the questions you're afraid to ask out loud, the weariness you cover with laughter. It doesn't stare through you, it leans in with care. And in that moment, you're not just a woman holding herself together, you're someone worthy of being held. You remember all the times you walked into a room and felt invisible, all the moments where you smiled, but no one asked if it was real, where your presence felt more like decoration than meaning. And then one day, someone greets you differently. They don't just look, they notice, they pause, they lean in. They create a space where you no longer feel like you're performing. They don't rush past you. They don't talk at you. They give you the gift of being received without judgment, without expectation. And for the first time in a long time, your guard begins to melt. It hurts in a beautiful way, realizing how long you've settled for half-hearted attention, how long you've made excuses for being overlooked. You convince yourself it's fine, that you're strong, that you don't need to be seen. But the truth is, every woman deserves to be greeted like she matters. Like her presence changes something in the air. Like her energy is a gift, not a burden. And when that moment finally comes, when someone greets you with gentle awe instead of obligation, it breaks something open in you. Not because it's loud, but because it's true. There is something healing about being met with calm intention. No rush, no agenda, just presence. A feeling that says, you don't have to shrink here. It's not about being needed, it's about being valued. And the pain creeps in when you realize how rare that is. How long you've been the one holding space for everyone else. How often you've been the one greeting others with warmth while quietly starving for it yourself. But now, this greeting feels like water to a thirsty soul. It's not performative, it's not earned, it's just given. You start to see the contrast everywhere. The greetings that were hollow, the ones that were performative, the ones that only arrived when it was convenient. You remember how many times you walked into rooms where your energy wasn't met, only used. And now you recognize the difference. You feel it in your chest, the ache of knowing you once called certain things love that were only noise, and you forgive yourself for not knowing better, for staying where you weren't seen. Because now you know that real love doesn't skip over your soul, it sits with it. There's no need to beg for time, no reason to fight for attention when someone's heart is tuned to yours. Their greeting doesn't ask you to be perfect. It doesn't ask you to always smile. It doesn't turn away when you're quiet or moody or undone. It just stays. It softens. It shows up even when you don't. And that kind of presence, it rewrites everything you thought you knew about love. It tells you that you don't have to be loud to be worthy, that you don't have to earn rest. That being greeted with softness isn't a fantasy, it's a right. It's not about roses or rehearsed words, it's the way they say your name like it matters. The way they notice when your energy is off, even when you say, "I'm fine." It's the silence they hold with you instead of filling it with distraction. It's how they slow down instead of rushing through the moment. They greet you like they've been waiting for you, not the perfect version, but the real one. And that feeling, that quiet honoring, it stays with you, it seeps into your bones, It becomes the new standard, and anything less becomes unbearable. You begin to realize that love has always had a language, and now you finally understand it. You don't settle for noise anymore. You don't chase after cold hands or distracted minds. You wait for the greeting that stills your spirit. The one T, Yasa, that says, I see you, I choose you every time. And even when your heart remembers the pain of being unseen, it also remembers the beauty of finally being met. Not halfway, but wholly, fully, gently. The way every soul longs to be met. There is a kind of love that doesn't just greet you with arms, it greets you with understanding. It doesn't rush to compliment your looks or touch your body. Instead, it slows down to explore the depth of your soul, the history behind your silence, the strength behind your softness. This kind of presence doesn't just want to be near you, it wants to know you. It asks questions, not out of curiosity, but out of care. It doesn't flinch when your truth spills out in messy pieces. It holds space for your tears, even when they don't come with explanations. And when your voice trembles or disappears, it doesn't walk away. It listens harder. It's painful how many times you've been touched, but never truly felt. How often people reach for your hand without ever reaching for your heart. You learn to smile through it. You learn to act like that was enough. But deep down, your soul cried for someone to see you as more than a moment. You ached for someone to hear what you weren't saying. You craved a connection that went beyond skin, beyond routine, the kind that doesn't just ask how your day was, it asks what's weighing on your spirit. And when you finally experience that, it's not just healing, it's heartbreaking, because you realize how long you lived without it. Being seen is not the same as being observed. Observation is easy. It's surface level. People notice your beauty, your walk, your smile, but when someone really sees you, it's different. They notice when you're distracted, when your eyes are shining but your heart is heavy. They greet you with stillness, not just small talk. They don't ask you to fix your face or be more cheerful. The I let you be. They welcome the full spectrum of you, not just the pretty parts. That kind of greeting feels sacred, because it says, I'm not here for a version of you, I'm here for you. You don't have to entertain to be kept. You don't have to be strong every second to be respected. And yet, for so long, that's how you survived. You thought you had to earn attention by shrinking your needs. You thought love meant smiling, even when you were breaking. You gave your energy to people who only loved the image you kept, not the soul behind it. And the hurt ran deep, not just because they didn't see you, but because they never even tried. So when someone greets you gently, when they approach like your heart is worth protecting, it cracks open something you tried so hard to keep guarded. There's a kind of presence that doesn't need to touch you to make you feel held. They don't need to fix you to make you feel better. Their presence alone is soothing because it's consistent, it's intentional, and it's real. They don't disappear when you're off balance. They don't grow cold when your emotions get heavy. They don't treat your sadness like a problem. They treat it like a part of your story. And that kind of love makes you feel safe to be human. Not perfect, not polished, just you. And the truth is, that kind of greeting is more intimate than any kiss. You remember the times when attention was temporary, when affection only came when you were glowing, performing, doing everything right, and now you realize that love doesn't come and go. It stays, especially when you're at your lowest. You realize that being greeted in your brokenness, not avoided for it, is one of the most profound forms of love. It says, I see the cracks and I'm not afraid. It reminds you that your softness isn't weakness, that your emotions are not too much, that your past doesn't make you hard to love. It makes you real. Real connection doesn't need a script. It doesn't follow a timeline. It flows in moments of truth. And when someone chooses to greet not just your presence but your pain, that's rare. They look at you without judgment. They listen without interrupting. They show up without being asked. Their greeting isn't loud, but it's honest. It meets you where you are, not where they want you to be. And for someone who's had to carry their heart in silence for so long, that kind of attention is deeply emotional. It's a reminder that you don't have to suffer unseen. It hurts to remember the days you begged for scraps of emotional presence, when your voice echoed in rooms where no one really cared to hear it, when your feelings were dismissed or minimized, when you were made to feel like you were too much, too sensitive, too complicated. So you learned to hide the most vulnerable parts of you, and that's the tragedy, when love teaches you to hide instead of heal. But healing begins when you're greeted not as a burden, but as a blessing. When someone tells you with their presence alone, you're not too much, you're exactly enough. You stop longing for fireworks once you've been met with peace. You stop craving attention once you've felt presence. The kind that sees your quiet and says, I'm here. The kind that notices your hesitation and says, Take your time. The kind that greets your vulnerability like it's valuable, not inconvenient. That doesn't walk away when your walls come down. That stays even when things get uncomfortable. That kind of love doesn't knock down your defenses. It waits patiently until you open the door. And when it steps in, it doesn't rearrange you, it sits beside you. There's a soft grief that comes with being seen, because it reminds you how long you've walked through life, half met, half heard, half loved. You accepted half presence because you were taught to believe that was all there was. But now you know the truth. You know what it feels like to be greeted with gentleness, with stillness, with care. And once you've tasted that end of love, you can't go back to anything less. Because now your soul remembers what real feels like. And it won't settle for anything that doesn't reach it. You should never have to remind someone to be happy that you're there. You should never feel like your presence is an interruption, like your love is an obligation someone has to check off. But so many times, that's exactly how it felt, like you were too much to be cherished, yet too little to be celebrated. The greetings you received were cold, distracted, routine. You could walk into a room and feel nothing shift, no warmth, no welcome. And deep down, you told yourself it didn't matter. You convinced yourself to accept the bare minimum because it hurt less than being honest about what you truly needed. But there's a silent kind of pain that builds in the heart when you're constantly greeted like you're just another task. A nod, a glance, a half-hearted hey. It chips away at your worth more than you realize. You start shrinking slowly. You lower your voice. You stop expecting joy. You begin to believe that maybe being loved like a blessing is a fantasy, not a right. You silence the ache in your chest, telling it to be grateful for the little you get. But deep inside, a piece of you keeps whispering, I deserve more than this. I deserve to be welcomed with light. There is nothing more painful than showing up for someone with your full heart, only to be greeted with indifference. To smile and not be smiled at. To reach out and not be held back. You try not to let it show, but it breaks something every time. And still, you keep showing up, hoping this time it will feel different, hoping this time your presence will be noticed, that your energy will be felt. But the truth is, when someone loves you, really loves you, they don't need to be reminded to value you. Their whole demeanor shifts when you arrive. You become the reason the room feels warmer. You don't realize how much damage has been done until someone finally greets you like you matter. Not with duty, not with size, but with joy. Their eyes light up, not because you did something, but because you are something. Their voice softens, their tone changes. They greet you like you are the best part of their day. And in that moment, you're not invisible. You're not another box on a to-do list. You're someone whose presence brings peace, not pressure. And that kind of greeting, soft, real, grounded, feels like something you've been aching for your whole life. It hits you hard when you realize you've mistaken routine for care, that the cold greetings you once received weren't signs of love, but signs of disconnect. And you made excuses for them. You said they were tired, stressed, busy, but now you know the truth. People make time for what they value. And the way someone greets you says everything about where you stand in their heart. If they greet you with distance, you'll feel it. If they greet you with delight, you'll know. And once you've experienced that kind of sincere welcome, you'll never again feel at home in cold places. You start to look back at all the times you accepted less than you needed just to avoid conflict. All the moments where your soul was crying for closeness, but you swallowed it, afraid of being too much. You kept showing up empty, hoping someone else would notice you needed to be filled. But the truth is, you were giving love without receiving it. You were pouring from a cup no one cared to refill. And that's the hurt you carried quietly, being available to people who never truly greeted your heart, only your convenience. There is something sacred about being greeted like you are someone's peace, not their pressure. When someone meets you at the door with stillness in their spirit, not stress. When they don't sigh when they see you, but breathe easier. That kind of presence seems so. Ace, I'm glad you're here. And for a heart that's been ignored, dismissed, or taken for granted, that greeting becomes a kind of medicine. It reaches the places that have been untouched for too long. It reminds you that being loved should never feel like a chore. It should feel like a choice, a joyful, intentional choice. You begin to realize that your value is not in how much you do, but in who you are. You don't have to earn softness. You don't have to prove your worth by overgiving. You are worthy of being met with kindness just by existing. And when someone greets you from a place of gratitude, not obligation, it realigns something inside of you. It helps you feel safe again, seen again. You are no longer begging to be noticed, you are being welcomed. That's the difference between surviving in love and being nurtured by it. It's hard to admit, but sometimes the loneliness hurt more when you weren't alone, when you were next to someone who never looked up, never lit up, never offered their full presence. You were physically seen but emotionally invisible, and that kind of pain leaves deep bruises. So when someone finally greets you with joy in their eyes and stillness in their soul, it feels like breaking and healing at the same time. Because part of you is so grateful, and part of you is grieving all the years you spent believing you were too much to be celebrated. Now you know better. Now you understand that the way someone greets you sets the tone for everything. You felt the sting of cold welcomes and the warmth of real ones. You've been in rooms where your presence changed nothing, and in others where your presence softened everything. And the difference is night and day. You no longer chase places where you're barely acknowledged. You wait for the greeting that feels like home. Because now your heart has tasted what it means to be cherished, and it refuses to forget. You never needed someone to be perfect. You just needed to be greeted with sincerity, to be met with presence, not passiveness. But for too long, you made excuses for the ones who couldn't even look up when you entered the room. You convinced yourself they were tired, distracted, not the expressive type. But your heart knew better. It knew when it was being ignored. It knew when it was being tolerated instead of treasured. You felt it in your gut, the way the room stayed cold even when you were standing right there. And still, you kept hoping, kept waiting, kept showing up with a heart full of quiet wishes. The hardest part wasn't the silence. It was knowing you were capable of being deeply present for others, yet rarely received the same in return. You remembered their birthdays, their stories, their moods. You knew when something was off just by the sound of their voice. You greeted them with full attention, with heart in hand, but when it was your turn to be seen, it felt like no one looked closely enough. You stood there, wide open, while others barely glanced. It made you question yourself, made you shrink in your own skin, made you believe your presence wasn't special enough to deserve attention. You don't have to teach someone how to treat what they value. That's what you eventually learned through the ache. What matters to someone never has to beg to be noticed. It's natural, it's instinct, and you saw how naturally they showed up for the things they loved, their passion, their hobbies, their friends, and yet, when it came to you, there was distance, delay, disinterest, and you stayed, thinking maybe if you were softer, quieter, more patient, things would change. But love doesn't need to be taught how to care. Love doesn't ignore what it's afraid to lose. The pain wasn't in the fights, it was in the quiet dismissals. The small moments that added up, the unread texts, the unfelt hugs, the distracted eyes. You could walk into a room and feel like a shadow, like your energy was invariably invisible, and yet you kept lighting candles where no one even noticed the flame. That's what you do when you love deeply. You give, even when it empties you. But the cost of being unseen slowly chips, until one day you realize you've been holding your breath, just hoping someone would finally see you. There's something holy about being greeted with consistency. Not the kind that shows up when it's convenient, but the kind that stays even when it's quiet, when you're moody, when you're withdrawn, when you don't feel like yourself. You don't have to be on to be worthy of kindness. You don't have to perform joy just to be noticed. You deserve to be met exactly where you are without having to earn it first. The truth is, someone who values your heart doesn't wait for you to shine. They sit beside you in the dark, and in that silence, they speak louder than words ever could. You remember the days when you had to ask for what should have been offered freely, when you had to spell out the simplest needs just to feel like you mattered. It left you feeling desperate, guilty, ashamed for even asking. But real love doesn't make you plead for presence. It shows up because it wants to, not because it was reminded. And when that kind of love finds you, it feels almost painful. Because now you know how much you've missed. Now you see all the ways you were once overlooked. And that grief hits you in the quiet moments, when the room is finally safe enough to feel it. There is a deep kind of loneliness in being surrounded by people who don't truly know your heart, who see your face but not your spirit, who greet you like a habit, not a home. You start to wonder if you're asking for too much, if expecting to be met with presence is unreasonable, but it's not. It never was. Your heart was never too much, your presence never too loud. What you were missing wasn't love, it was recognition. Someone who could look at you, really look, and say, "Ollie, I see you, I feel you, I'm here with you." You learned the hard way that love without presence is a slow kind of heartbreak. It doesn't shout, to you all at once. It erodes you in pieces, one unnoticed moment at a time, until you forget how it feels to be chosen without hesitation, until you stop expecting warmth when you walk into a room, until you numb yourself to the ache of being overlooked. But deep down, your soul remembers. It remembers how it should feel. And when someone finally greets you like your existence matters, it brings all the buried pain to the surface. What you longed for was never extravagant. It was simple. Eye contact that says, "You're safe here." A voice that softens when it says your name. A presence that lingers, not rushes. The feeling of being prioritized, not postponed. Of being someone's calm, not their chaos. And most of all, the quiet assurance that you don't have to earn being loved, you just are. When someone greets you with that kind of intention, it restores something sacred in you. It reminds you that your heart was never hard to love. It just needed to be met by someone who was willing to see it. You no longer settle for being tolerated. You no longer stay in spaces that only remember your name when it's convenient. You've outgrown the kind of love that needs instruction manuals and reminders. You've learned that the right kind of presence will never overlook you. It won't flinch at your emotions or grow distant when you need closeness. It will greet you with peace, with patience, with presence. And you will never again mistake distance for depth or coldness for calm. Because now you've felt the difference. And your heart refuses to go back to pretending that less is enough.